Welcome back, everybody. We are here with Desiree, and she is here talking to us about her life after stillbirth. Her son, we're going to get into this a little bit more, but it was little Turner. And so welcome so much, Desiree. We're grateful that you're here to talk to us about some things that helped and things that didn't help after your loss. So welcome again.
Thank you.
We're
I'm glad to do this as well. So.
Yeah, it's always good to talk to other parents of loss. I mean, it stinks that we're in the same boat, but we're grateful that we have this community regardless. So Desiree, can you tell us a little bit about Turner? When was he born approximately, and what happened to him, and what caused his death?
Yes. So Turner was born on March 25th, 2017, at 38 weeks. He passed away from what they considered a compression of his umbilical cord, how it was positioned and how he was born. That's kind of the best guess that we've been given with
Yeah.
the information that we have.
Yeah.
He was beautiful, perfect, just a sweet little baby, active little guy. Yeah, so it's been about 5.5 years since he passed, and he's our fifth child. And we do have one more now, which we'll get into, but so he's 5 of 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun, big family, I think. So
Yeah.
I would encourage you all, listeners and viewers, that if you get a chance, please watch Desiree's birth story of Turner, because it's lovely and it's heartbreaking, and it's also kind of crazy too. Just like you realize how crazy it is to have a baby that
Yeah.
is stillborn. So
Yeah.
I would highly recommend going over and listening to that, because it is so good. So Desiree, thank you again for that. One thing I did completely neglect to ask you during the birth episode actually was, how did you get Turner's name? It's such a cute name, and I know that names are tricky, and names
Yeah.
yeah. So tell me more
Yeah.
about it.
So all of our kids, our girls are named after, well, we have Reagan. She's named after President Reagan.
Oh,
But girls, their first name, well, I guess all of our children are named after somebody, but whether or not their family or not, that's
yeah.
determined. Well, it's different for each of them. So our girls are named after people, but their middle names are after family members.
Oh, okay.
And then our boys are all after political figures or presidents. My husband loves politics. He loves history.
Yeah.
I've slowly, being married to him, love politics now. Considering the turmoil that we're in right now, but which makes me sad. I actually enjoy discussing politics now as well.
Yeah.
So our two older boys are named after presidents, Thomas Jefferson and Andrew Jackson. Then Turner is named after a war general from the Civil War.
Oh.
Yeah, and so my husband has, he's a Southerner through and through, and had ancestors who fought for the Confederacy. And so that's a huge part of his heritage as well. And whereas me, I'm like, I'm from Wisconsin, and
right.
I don't have any ancestors who are part of it. They came here later. So, but that's important for him. And so and plus I just love the name.
Yeah.
I don't really care that much about the historical aspect of it, but it means something to him. But I just love the name.
Yeah, it's a really cute name.
And then, so that's how he got his name. And then our next child is also named after a prominent political figure as well.
Yeah. That's so fun. Like, I love a good theme. So that's pretty fun.
So they're all named after somebody.
Yeah.
And our two oldest are actually also named after, there was a Thomas Jefferson and Andrew Jackson, my husband's family ancestry line too, but not the
Okay. Oh,
person, Andrew Jackson. So yeah.
that's
So we kind of
cool.
kept that being consistent with all the boys.
Yeah. Yeah. Very
So
cool.
yeah.
Um,
So
and then, so I want to ask you, I know that it was right after Turner, basically after you buried Turner, like after his funeral.
mhm.
That's kind of where we left off from the birth episode. How was life after that? Just kind of the short term. How are
Yeah.
those like first 6 months for you guys, for your family? Because you had at that time 4 kids. Like that's
Mhm.
like you. It's. I mean, it. You could shut off completely, but it would. I mean, your kids probably needed you.
Yeah, it wasn't, as far as like wanting to crawl into a hole, it wasn't possible.
Yeah.
I wanted to, but I knew I still had to function in some capacity for my children
Yeah.
because they still needed a mom who was, up and about throughout the day taking care of them.
Mm-hmm.
Those first 6 months, I don't remember a whole lot that first month or two. I remember just overwhelming sorrow, overwhelming grief. I remember people bringing like meals and things like, but I couldn't tell you who they were.
Right.
I just remember lots of nights just sobbing and clenching to the hospital blanket that I took home and just sobbing, lots of sobbing when I was alone. My kids saw me cry during the day, but I didn't want them to see me crying all day long every day.
Yeah.
So during the day, I really tried to keep it together and be strong for them. And that's what we do, right, as
Mm-hmm.
moms
Yep.
and parents. But in my alone times, or when I was in the shower or whatever, I would allow myself to break down then and really break down.
Yeah.
So those first 6 months are just really fuzzy, but especially those first couple of months. I just remember it being very dark
Yeah.
and very depressing. I for one struggled with a lot of not wanting to be here anymore. Lots of thoughts of not wanting to be here, and knowing I needed to not think about that because of my children.
Yeah.
So there was struggles with that, struggles with suicide, but I did not. I had enough wherewithal in my cognitive ability to
Yeah.
know I can't go down that road fully.
Yeah.
But it was certainly a struggle. And like I mentioned in the birth story, I was very active with working out and running. I was a part of a gym,
Mm-hmm.
a local gym, and it was a Gold's gym. So it was a pretty big organization and
Yeah.
lots of people came there. And so my entire pregnancy, all these people saw me pregnant.
Oh.
And I went back to working out 4 weeks after he was born because at the time I didn't care about the 6 weeks wait to heal. I was in so much pain mentally and emotionally that I needed some type of relief physically. And so I threw myself back in the gym. Um, and for 7 months, got, oh, you had the baby. Oh, how's the baby? And mostly from men because I worked out in
You
the
lifted
heavy
weights. Yeah.
section.
Yeah.
I lifted weights. I lifted very heavy weights, and
Yeah.
I wasn't on the elliptical and the treadmill very
Yeah.
often. And so the majority of the people who were around me for 2 years and watched me my entire pregnancy were these guys, and they didn't really know me, but they knew me.
Right.
And I remember every day for several weeks, it was, oh, how's the baby doing? And then having to explain what had happened and then feeling completely horrible
Yeah.
and horrible for asking. And I'm like, why would you feel horrible for asking a pregnant woman if she had her baby when she's clearly not pregnant
Yes.
anymore? Like, no one expects that answer. And quickly found myself like trying to comfort these people when I'm like I'm the one that just lost my child and now I have to comfort you.
Yeah.
And feeling bad for them for thinking that they shouldn't have asked.
Right.
And so it was a very strange dynamic
Yeah, it's
of,
bizarre.
yeah, of wanting to be left alone, but knowing I couldn't be left alone because I was very heavily pregnant the last time they saw me.
Mhm.
So, um, so that happened like all the time.
Yeah.
And being asked how he was doing and if I had a boy or girl or whatnot. And I did have a close friend who was like my workout buddy.
Mhm. Mhm.
So she kind of was there with me through it all and um, helped me through some of those
Yeah, I
moments
was gonna
too.
say, was she a buffer sometimes or just like
Yeah. I remember that the most awkward one, it was this guy, and he was a very energetic, he was the husband of one of the childcare workers. And
Oh,
so I
uh-huh.
knew his wife very well because they watched Andrew for me. And so he was very excited because he knew me through her and he saw me working out and all this stuff. And him for like 5 minutes after finding out that he had died, just completely stumbling over words and
Oh,
every attitude under the book and just like trying to make right this horrible situation
yeah.
that I remember telling him like, you don't have to say anything, just please stop. Just please stop.
It will be
Like,
better that way.
like it was so I remember feeling so bad for him. But yeah, and the gym personnel, they were really because that was like my life outside of my home,
Yeah.
right? Being at the gym and some aspect of my life outside of my house. And the gym personnel were all very, very comforting and just like very sorrowful. They even sent me flowers,
Oh,
the gym did, and just they were very, very loving. But I just remember like for months just looking forward to going to the gym, but also being like, oh my gosh, please, somebody don't
somebody.
ask me to, I can't do it today.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like, can I just go to the gym and work out? And so that went on for a while. Um, my husband actually ended up deploying 10 to 12 weeks after Turner died.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, for
So
how
he had
long?
for 5 months.
Oh my gosh. Really?
Uh, so he left in June
Yeah.
of 17 and he went to Kuwait and Afghanistan. It was like he went to parts of
Right.
Afghanistan certain points during his deployment, but he wasn't stationed there the entire time, but he did go to Afghanistan as
Wow.
well. And then I had that aspect of knowing I had just lost my child and here my husband is in a war zone essentially for parts of his deployment and only being able to speak to him like for a little while
Yeah.
throughout the week while we're both trying to grieve. And I feel like it was a blessing. It was awful at the time, having to not be with him
Yeah.
and being apart from him for so long. But I feel like we grieved and processed it so differently
Mm.
that I felt like at that time that's what we needed. Like looking back on it now, we were able to do what we needed to do individually to
Yeah.
grieve those early months and moments after losing our son and not have this like expectation of like, well, like I have to fix this for them. Like,
Yeah.
because I didn't see the moments he was grieving and he didn't see those moments of me grieving. And so we were able to fully feel whatever we needed to feel and not feel like we had to help our spouse in that moment as well.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, no, I've never thought of it that way because like the fact that because there's kind of a two-part job, right? You got to do your own grieving and then there's kind of
Mhm.
like this comforting, like you want to
Yeah.
be there for your spouse. And the
Yeah.
fact that you guys actually had kind of a part-time
Yeah.
where you're like, "Okay, I'm grieving." And then there's probably other people that are helping you through like comforting you through all of those times. Yeah, I've never thought of that before, but that is a little
Yeah.
bit of a blessing, isn't it?
It It was. I can look back now and
Mhm.
realize that I was very angry at the
Oh,
time
I
that
would have
he,
been so mad.
because he's my rock, like he's my everything. And I was very, very like, oh my gosh, like, what do you mean you have to go?
Yeah.
Like, I have to go through this now.
Yeah.
But looking back, it was very, it was huge in our finding healing and the grieving process,
Yeah.
doing what we needed to do and not having that pressure of having to feel like you also need to help somebody else too.
Yeah.
Because I felt that pressure with my children,
Right.
and both Dave and I lost a child. Yeah, we were able to do what worked for us and not feel like we had to act or do or be or say certain things.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's a blessing now.
Now, yes, I know. Looking back, because I
And
would,
also, and
I'll,
like having to be gone for that long too,
yeah,
like, because I mean, losing a child, it can break or make a marriage, right?
completely. Yeah.
It's awful on a marriage. But having him gone right afterwards, like, really solidified the fact that I cannot lose my husband on top of this.
Yes. Yeah.
And for him as well. Like,
Right.
we knew we had to do everything we could to make our family strong despite the circumstances we found ourselves in.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like imperative. Like when he got home, like we have to do everything we can to get through this.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah.
That is
So that
so
was
crazy.
that was a huge monkey wrench in the life after losing a child, of now having to say goodbye to my husband and not knowing if he'd come home.
Right.
I knew he would, more than likely,
Yeah. But
but
you just never know in
you
those
never
situations.
know. So
Well, and I was gonna say, I'll be completely honest. I remember being like, whenever my husband Lee would go to the store after we lost Brandon,
mhm.
I was like, "Wait, where are you going?" Like, I
Yeah.
I really just wanted him right there or us together, because I just, yeah, there's like that little bit of paranoia of like, I'm gonna lose you too, or
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so that would have been really difficult for me. And then I also, like you mentioned earlier, that you've struggled with suicidal thoughts, and I would be
Mhm.
concerned for myself if I struggled with
Yeah.
that before, even before the loss.
Yeah.
Add the loss on top of that, yeah. I would be like, "You need to keep me safe too." Like,
Yeah.
oh,
Well, and I feel like with him being gone, I really had to figure it out because I
yeah,
was on my own now with my kids.
yeah, exactly.
Really had to figure it out. And I couldn't, and I'm a huge believer in you need to feel whatever you're feeling in that moment. Like, I don't think it wasn't helpful for me to push it down.
Right.
I did not like recognize it, but like in those moments, like I realized I can't think about that
Mhm.
because that's not going to help me or my children, especially while my husband's gone.
Yeah,
Like, how is that going to be helpful for anyone?
yeah,
And so, yeah, and had he been there, I know I would have just stayed in this pity, sorrow, even though I was already in it, but even more so than I already was because he was there and I could do those things. And so while it was awful at the time and I was like, how on earth am I going to get through this? I can look back on it now and recognize the blessings that it afforded our family,
yeah.
and that was probably the best thing for both of us to be able to come back together and figure out life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Yeah, but you
yeah,
don't
there
think, yeah,
were some pretty terrifying moments, like months,
yeah,
honestly, of wondering if I would see my husband again, um, and um, having to parent and deal with my children's grief by myself.
yeah.
So, yeah.
That's a different, yeah, completely. Because so just as a reminder, you had at the time like an 11-year-old, an
Mm-hmm.
9-ish year old,
Mm-hmm.
and then how old was a
Seven,
7, and then a
almost seven.
3.
She was six,
Yeah.
six, and then yeah, so 11, 9, 6, and 3.
Yeah. And your youngest probably didn't quite understand everything that was going on. Um,
No.
but then your other kids, yeah, you had to console them. And
Yeah.
how did that look for you? Did they how was their grief? I mean, that's like a totally different beast right there too.
Yeah, so every one of them grieved differently. And then I grieved differently. And so we had like these 6 family members grieving the same child, but so differently. And it was very hard trying to know not only how to help myself, but how do I help my children?
Yeah.
And I can't fix this for them, but I do have to figure out how to help them through it and endure it. So um, my oldest was very open, so we would have a lot of conversations, a lot of crying, a lot of, you know, she there was a lot of hugs and snuggling and
Mhm.
just being there for one another, because she's like a little mommy herself
It's
to
oh,
any of her siblings that came after she did, and she loved the babies. And so that, and then my oldest son just didn't want to talk about it.
mm,
Didn't want to talk about it. It made him too sad, and he didn't understand why you couldn't be here. He was innocent. He was perfect. Why wasn't it me? I don't want to talk about it.
oh,
And so that was difficult to know how to help him because he would not open up about those feelings. And I wasn't about to force him to do that either.
mm-mm.
But it was just with him and specifically, I was just like, well, if you need to talk about him, you can. He's still your brother. Like, don't
Yeah,
ever feel like you can't talk about it. But I'm here when and if you do. And you can talk about anything you need to, any thoughts or feelings. And he did eventually open up over the years. And so I think learning how each one of them grieved and being able to meet them in their own moment and meet them where they were at was what I needed to do and what was the most helpful. I didn't push the issue. I didn't make them talk about him. But if they did, we went there
yeah.
and we talked about it. And but yeah, and Scout was very innocent. She's our third. She turned 8 while my husband was deployed, or no, she turned 7 while my husband was deployed. And but she was very innocent and loving about him,
Mhm.
and was has kind of always been like that over the years
Yeah.
of, no, well, mom, but he's in heaven with Jesus, and
Yeah.
and he's still a part of our family, and yeah, we miss him, but you know, like, so she had more of an innocence to it.
Yeah, almost matter of fact. Yeah, of course. He's
You
good.
know, yes, it's sad, but he's still our brother, And then Andrew, that was difficult,
Okay.
because he didn't understand. He had met him,
Yeah.
this beautiful baby, and was like, "Yay, he's here!" And it took him months to figure out that he wasn't coming home. And that was heartbreaking, like having to tell him over and over again that. I remember it was probably about like 6 weeks after he died, he looked at me and I was crying. And he's just like, Mommy, don't be sad. Turner will wake up and he'll come home.
Oh,
And there was a lot of that,
yeah.
just thinking that he was going to wake up and come out of this box that he was in and come home.
Yeah.
And having to explain to him, no, he's in heaven, but him having no concept of what heaven is. Um, he's had a pretty special connection, I feel like, with Turner specifically
Mhm.
in the way that he grieves him, because it's very loving and he's very open with how he feels now because he's
Oh,
8
yeah.
now. And if he cries, he's just like, Mom, I really miss Turner. And what do you think he'd be doing now? So he's very
Oh,
open with it.
yeah.
Whereas my others, like over the years, like it's changed for them
Mhm.
and they still love him, they miss him, but it's hard for them to go back into that deep grief those first couple of years.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
they've worked through the things that they need to find some healing in it. And I just let it be. Like I'm not going to force them to be like, no, you have to talk about him and you have to
Mm-hmm.
miss him just as much as I do, because I know they miss them, but they've been able to work through that on their own. And they still miss him, but it's not the just that heaviness
Yes.
comes with that that newness and freshness of grief.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so it's even evolved over the years
Of
of
course.
how I the best support them in their grief too.
Yeah.
Because we have pictures of him throughout our
Yeah.
house, and when we take family photos, we bring a picture of Turner, and he's in our family photos with us,
Yeah.
and not in all of them, but he's in
A
half of
good.
them at least.
Yeah. Yeah. He's part of your
So
family.
he's still our son, and so it's not a hush hush topic in our home.
Yeah.
And they know that if they need to talk about Turner, they can. And I've always been that way with them. But learning how to meet them where they are and what was helpful for each of them, that was very difficult. And that just took some time
Yeah.
knowing how to do that. And like I said, I think I said in the last episode that I have a master's in counseling.
Yeah. Which is
And
awesome.
so I kind of know some techniques and tools,
Yeah.
and to how to help others. I don't know how to apply those to myself.
It's very personal, though. Let's be
Everything I
honest.
learned went out the window the moment I lost my child.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, there's no way. Like,
There's,
this is not anything I can ever overcome.
yeah. Nope.
There's just learning how to deal with it. So,
Yeah. I just want to point out that one thing that you said that I really super loved about how you help your kids have dealing with the grief kind of early on is just that you met them where they were at. And I mean,
yeah.
I do think that's actually just a really good parenting tip. Just meet your
Yeah.
kids where they're at because it's not going to be all a like one, exactly same way that your grief will look like. And so you do really just need to figure out where that person is, whether it's a kid or a spouse or whatever. It just seems like you just need to meet people where they're at, and
Yeah.
it'll get you
Well,
farther.
and children are very observant.
Hmm.
And they saw me talking about him and grieving him and being open about that with other people. And so they knew it was okay to do
Yeah.
that they didn't have to hide these things and like be scared to talk to me about it. And I was very vocal with them as well. Like, you can talk to me anytime you want to, but I'm not going to push the matter and make you talk to me
Hmm.
about this. So, yeah, so I feel like there's a lot of leading,
Yes.
also just an example of what it is to grieve
Yeah.
and recognize that this was a huge loss for our family and not pretend it wasn't.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Not
yeah.
hiding it, not pushing it down.
In my own home, I did not put on like this, I'm okay all the time. Like,
Yeah.
yes, I tried to be strong for my children, but if I needed to cry, I would cry. And if I was in front of my kids, I was in front of my kids.
Yeah.
And if it got overboard, then I would be like, I just need to go sit for a moment in my room. And they knew why, but there was lots and lots of tears.
Yeah.
Lots of tears those first few months. So,
Yeah. I know a lot of things have happened actually. Let's talk about that. So,
yeah.
so you lost Turner, your husband is deployed, but you guys ended up having another baby after
Yeah.
Turner. Tell me a little bit about that and how that evolved because pregnancy after loss and parenting after loss is like, whoa, it's so hard. People are like, "Oh, you have your baby now." And you're like, "Yeah, but that doesn't take away the fact that I lost a
Yeah.
baby." Like, yeah.
Yeah. So, I remember when we were in the hospital, like we still had Turner with us, and I remember my husband saying, "Do you think we'll ever have another one?" Because he was supposed to be our last. And I was very adamant, no, I
Oh,
cannot go through this again. Like, knowing now that I can lose a baby at
at
essentially
any time.
like, no way, I can't go through this. Because pregnancy and the bliss, because all 5 of my pregnancies before our 6th one were completely blissful.
Mhm.
And I had that very innocent naiveness about me where like everything's fine once I hit this certain gestation and my baby's healthy, so everything's fine. And that was gone. That was gone. And I did not think I could ever walk through pregnancy ever again. And didn't want to, at all. Like it just shattered me. But I knew I was so looking forward to raising another child and then having that completely ripped away from you. There was just that emptiness of wanting to take care of another person.
Yeah.
And, but I was not willing to go down the pregnancy route to feel that.
Yeah.
So my husband deployed, and when he came home, my cycles were all over the place after I gave birth because I wasn't breastfeeding.
Yeah.
And my body was like, what the heck's going on? And so I had no idea where I was in my cycle, and I was not ready to be pregnant again. And 3 weeks after he got home, we found out, we found out we were pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
So he came home like right when I must have been ovulating.
Yeah.
I had no idea. And my cycles have always been very, very predictable.
Yeah.
Very predictable. And like, but we've also been very fertile.
Yes.
And so, yeah, it was a huge shock. Huge shock.
Were you like, okay.
I was not ready for that.
Yeah.
I knew my husband wanted another baby, but he was like, you're the one who's going to have to go through pregnancy. And if you don't want to have another baby, I'm not going to push the issue. Like he was not pushing that issue at all. He knew better than to do that.
Yeah, smart.
And at that moment in time, I was not in any mental or emotional capacity to walk through another pregnancy, especially like after everything that had happened 7 months prior with him dying and my husband deploying, and now he's home. And we had also started homeschooling at this time as well.
Oh my goodness.
While my husband was deployed. Yeah. So that was not on the radar. And so I think about it now and I'm like, I think God knew that I was never going to be ready for that. And so he was going to make it happen because he knew we needed to have another baby.
Yeah.
So, so we found out we were pregnant. I was terrified, absolutely terrified. And it was like I was a first-time parent all over again.
Yeah.
And all the anxiety that comes with like a first pregnancy and not knowing what to expect, but also knowing how horribly wrong it can go, and because you've lived through it. And I was already scared of miscarriage with all the other kids, but very fearful of that. We had all the testing done. Mm-hmm. Met with a maternal fetal specialist 6 weeks after Turner died just to see if there was anything wrong with me, because we did not have an autopsy done on Turner, but we had the placenta
tested. Okay.
And everything came back fine. His placenta was smaller, but it was healthy. And so his cord was also very short. Oh. And the best guess they gave us was because of the length of the cord and how it was wrapped, and the placenta also being smaller, that it couldn't keep the jelly in the cord strong enough. Uh-huh. And the compression it was taking.
Yeah.
And so we knew through all of that there was nothing wrong with me and there wasn't anything wrong with him. Mm-mm. It was just a horrible tragedy that unfortunately we had to walk through, that took Turner from us. So, but still I was like, that was not comforting me. I wanted all the testing done. I wanted all the things done.
Yeah.
So we did the early blood draw to find out any chromosome issues and to find out if it was a boy or girl.
So you were going to find out on this one. Okay.
Yeah, because I had a lot of regrets with that. And I was like, no, I'm not. Like, if anything were to happen to this baby, I want you guys to know him while I'm pregnant with him.
Yeah.
And I don't want to take that away from anyone. So we found out at 13 weeks that we were expecting another little boy, and that was very bittersweet.
Yeah.
I was terrified it would be another boy, but I was very hoping it would be another boy, because in my mind, I knew Turner was a boy, even though I didn't have that confirmation until after he was born. So I was very much prepared to take care of another son. Mm-hmm. So to be given that opportunity to take care of another son, I felt like um, that's what I needed. But we would have been happy with a girl
Of course.
too,
Of course.
right? But it was kind of like this silver lining in all of it, even though at the moment it was very hard.
Yeah.
Um, so, so yeah, we told our kids when I was 13 weeks along at Christmas. We had them open up a gift with some baby onesies, and and they were all boys because we didn't have anything for Turner. I didn't buy anything for him because we didn't know what he was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, I've got plenty of boy and girl stuff. Like,
He'll be
we're
fine.
fine.
Yeah.
So he had his bassinet and he had like a few unisex things, but that was it. And so that was a very, oh, it was a very beautiful and sorrowful moment because they weren't expecting it. And my oldest, she took it very hard. She was very fearful, but also felt like we were trying to replace them.
Oh, yeah.
She was being honest in her feelings, and as a 11-year-old girl, I can understand why she would feel that way. But there was a lot of no, like we are never going to replace your brother. Like that's not even possible. This is just another baby that we can love on and bring home, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I was very honest again with them as well. Like she's like, well, what happens if this happens again? And I'm like, I can't guarantee that that won't, but let's worry about it then. And let's worry about this moment, not what could happen, because I was already struggling with that. And I didn't need her to struggle with that on top of everything else.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of yays and a lot of tears in that moment of them finding out that they were going to have a brother. And we knew he was a boy.
Yeah.
And so it was like, yay, we're having another brother. And then, oh, we so missed her.
Yeah.
And everything that we should, it was also our first Christmas without him.
Yeah.
And so we were trying to bring some joy to this horrible feeling we had. It was what's supposed to be a joyful time of the year. Mm-hmm. And so, it was beautiful and horrible all at the same time.
That's what it is.
That awful dynamic of life after loss, of the sorrow and joy that you can experience in the same moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I ended up seeing a counselor during my pregnancy with him.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Was that helpful? Was it helpful?
Yes. I got to my third trimester and I was completely debilitated in knowing what to do. Like I was not doing okay. And mind you, we also did not tell anyone that I was pregnant until I was like 20 weeks.
Okay.
I hid my pregnancy with scarves. It was like winter time and I'm like, this is perfect.
Easy.
Because I was so scared of what other people would say. And I didn't want anyone to be like, oh, well, you get your baby now. Or, oh, well, like, oh, this time it'll be fine. And of course, they still end up saying that.
They do.
We told them. But we only told our close family and then just a couple of close friends. Mm-hmm. I knew I needed people to help me through this, but I didn't need everybody that I knew to be a part of that early stage of pregnancy for me.
Yeah. So
I made a Facebook post to announce his pregnancy and then left it at that. So I was very clear that like, this is going to be difficult and I need support. And yes, we are so overjoyed for this baby, but we are still grieving the loss of our son. And this new baby is wonderful, but he will never replace our son that is in here. Yeah. Very clear in that.
Yes.
So, and we also announced Turner's death that same way on Facebook. We never verbally told anyone unless they didn't know us outside of Facebook.
Right.
Thank goodness for social media.
Yeah, it is kind of nice that way to be able to disseminate information as needed. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So I saw a counselor that pregnancy, and it was helpful um, because I was just totally bombarded with fear and anxiety, and saw her from about 28, 30 weeks. It was like
Mhm.
January or February time frame of 2018.
Okay.
So we found out October of 2018 that we were pregnant, late October. And then he was born June 10th, 2018. And completely uneventful pregnancy, just like all of my other babies.
Mhm.
Very active, which is exactly what I needed.
Right. Yeah.
But I received a lot of extra monitoring. I had 2 NSTs a week past 30 weeks
Awesome.
and 2 BPPs, the biophysical profile
Yeah.
ultrasounds every week as well
Wow. Okay, that's great.
until I was delivered. And I did stay with my midwives. Um, I was like, I can't deliver this baby with anyone else. You guys know my history. You know
Mhm.
the sorrow that I just walked through. And I need someone to be understanding of the level of care I'm going to need to make it through this.
Yeah.
And so they were very accommodating. And they also had me see the MFN my entire pregnancy as
Oh,
well.
good.
So I had 2 eyes
Yeah.
on this baby
Yeah.
the entire time. And they induced me at 37 weeks because they didn't want me going past the gestation we lost
Yeah.
term. And I was also very adamant on I cannot go past that gestation. So, and he was born screaming and screaming and alive,
Yeah.
and just absolutely beautiful, like the rest of our kids. And he had a beautiful birth, very anxious birth. Like I was a mess,
Yeah.
but I felt comforted being able to hear his heartbeat and
Yeah.
knowing that every single nurse person in there knew about our son who died. And that if I said I needed this, you you need to get it,
Get on
like
it.
or whatever. And the nurse who helped deliver Turner also came in on her day off and helped me deliver him as
Oh,
well.
that's so special.
My midwife who delivered Turner was out of town that weekend, but another midwife delivered Brooks. Um, so our next son is Brooks. And yeah, so I once he was born, I felt like I could finally breathe.
Yes.
I felt like I was holding my breath for like 9 months. And but then the new set of anxiety of parenting a new baby after this devastating loss kicked in.
Yeah.
That was a huge challenge for me as well, is taking care of Brooks while grieving Turner. And I really struggled with postpartum depression and anxiety for 6 or 7 months.
Yeah. I mean, how can you I always think like how can you not just it's so hard not to like feel this contradiction all the time, right? Like you're so happy
Yeah,
that he's finally here and then you just feel so much guilt on the other hand, right? And then you're like I got to just make sure my baby's alive. I don't know, that's the
yeah,
way I felt. It's like,
yes, yeah, no, yeah. I mean that's exactly how I felt because I was like, okay, yes, he's here, but I also know he could not be here at any moment because I had met moms who
yeah.
had lost babies after birth.
Yeah.
So this whole new world opened up that I didn't even know about. I knew about it, but I didn't know about it,
Yeah.
and just all the anxieties that come with that. Um, and so, just like I felt like a first time parent being pregnant with him, I felt like a first time parent actually parenting him then
Yeah.
too. I was anxious about everything,
Yeah.
everything.
Did you
So
stick with your counselor during so you started going with your counselor halfway through that pregnancy. Did you continue after you had him?
I did not. Probably should have, but it took everything in me just to like do anything.
Mm,
in that those several months after he was born, and like I no longer wanted to talk about what I was struggling with. I only wanted to talk about it with the people who were close to me.
mm.
I became really introverted,
Oh, okay. Huh.
so I kind of withdrew from everyone and anything.
Yeah.
as if I wasn't already doing that before, but I definitely did that after he was born.
But do you think that was maybe like a protection mechanism? Like, was that? Do you think that helped you though?
I don't know if it helped me, but I definitely think it was a way of protecting
Mm,
myself because I had already, a lot of it was because I was so fearful of how anybody else would view him or
mhm.
his place in our family. And I knew the comments I had received after we lost Turner, and I didn't want to hear those things from other people after I had this new baby and them trying to tell me, oh, he's here. Now your family's good. Like, just, I was in no shape or form able to handle those things. And so I kept pretty much to myself and my family at that time, unless I had to like be around other people. But
Right.
I was pretty, losing Turner, I was a very optimistic, happy go lucky person. And then after I became very introverted, very, had a lot of anxiety with social situations and struggled with having to actually converse with people.
Mhm.
So yeah, and then having Brooks, it just made it worse
Yeah.
for me personally.
Wow.
So I was still grateful to have him here, but it was so out of my comfort zone to try to like get together with people and put on this face
Yeah.
that I was okay because I was not okay.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. It's so hard. Yeah. Like it feels like there's an expectation to, yeah,
yeah,
be a certain person or, yeah, put on a certain face. And
yeah.
that's hard. I mean, I can imagine, like, I don't know if you were still in charge of the kids at church, or
Not
if,
at that time.
okay.
I
I know.
still in capacity at church for 7 months after he died.
Oh,
And about a month after my husband came home, they released me from that calling. And
uh-huh.
then I was now a teacher for all the women.
Oh, okay.
So that was very difficult to now have to like actually lead discussions on faith and joy and finding all of these, you know, gratefulness for God and the blessings that we have and all
And
of that was very interesting part of life
yeah.
after being released from being over all the children.
Yeah. Like,
Because
oh man, that's hard.
I really struggled going to church.
Yeah.
Because I was also I forgot to mention in the last episode as well. I was pregnant with three other women at church,
Oh,
and um, me and two of those women were due within 4 days of each other.
oh my goodness.
We all had boys. So I really struggle going to church and seeing these beautiful boys and knowing that my son should also be there. And then also watching everybody dote on these boys,
Yeah.
knowing I should be a part of that because at the time I felt like everybody forgot that I also had a baby. And I was very angry that nobody was recognizing that. And so I just didn't talk to anyone.
Yeah.
And I secluded myself a lot and um, was very, very hurt. But knowing now, nobody knew what to say or do. And I don't blame them,
Yeah.
certainly, especially now, you know, but at the time I was just very angry that nobody was recognizing that, like, I had a son too, and he should be here. And why isn't anybody talking to me about my son?
Yes.
Because I wanted to talk about him, but nobody else wanted to, except for a few select close friends.
Yeah.
So,
I know
yeah.
that, like, you don't realize, but yeah, how much I mean, that's why we started this podcast, because we want to talk about our kids. Like,
Yes.
and we don't get that chance. Nobody asks. Like, they ask about my daughter, or they ask about my other son, and now, but they don't really talk about Brandon, who we lost.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
hard. Like, it's hard.
Yeah.
And then
And like,
especially, I mean, I'll tell you, I mean, like, I'll just say that in my church congregation, families are a big deal.
yes.
There, it's so many things are surrounding families and families' activities. And so it is so hard when you are, like, yes, expected to talk about joy and faith and
Mhm.
all these things in families. And you're like, my family's not the way I
Yeah.
wanted it to be, or I envisioned it. So,
Yeah. And I have a lot more grace with it now
yes.
because I understand people just don't know what to say. You
Yeah.
know, that's a horrible situation for everybody involved.
Yeah.
And they were grieving with me. I just didn't see it because they weren't doing what I wanted them to do. And, and I wanted to share about him, but I didn't have any like day to day moments to share about him. And it was difficult to hear about our experience. And I understand that now. So I learned who to talk to and who I could talk to. And I just kind of stuck with those people, but everybody else I kind of avoided.
Yeah.
And not because anyone did or
No.
said anything inappropriate or awful, or it was just that was how I dealt with it. Is I was very much inward. I dealt with it very like to myself and a few select people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Desiree, so if you would, so let me just kind of back up. I have a couple of questions kind of stemming off of that. So,
Yeah.
what did help you? What did help you kind of get into a better place?
Yeah. So I think finding people like yourself who've been there, who've been through this awful situation, and being able to connect with other people was certainly very helpful for me. I ended up meeting a ton of moms, but about 40 or 50 of us were really, really close. And I formed a support group on Facebook called Turning Hearts. And just like a little signal to my son with a
Yeah.
turning
Yeah.
for his name Turner. And so I formed that support group, and I just wanted a place for those 40 or 50 women to be able to have our own little place because we met in other support groups.
Yeah.
I want us to be able to have a place that we can just talk and not have all these other people who we really don't know, because it was a huge support group we were in
Yeah.
on Facebook. And so I started that, and that is still a community that's active today. I've kind of taken a step back from it because I realized it wasn't helpful for me to keep going back there continually.
Yeah.
But it's still very much like a community, and it's very. I just let it be what it needs to be.
Yes. Yeah.
And not very involved in it, but it's there for people who need it.
Yeah.
And I'm still very close with a lot of these women because we all lost our babies around the same time.
Right.
And in particular, we all lost them in our third trimester, the majority of us.
Right.
Lost our children around similar gestations as well. And that was what was helpful for me, is finding other people who lost babies in similar situations, circumstances. And yeah, so that was certainly helpful, finding others who understood so that I could talk about my son. I had this overwhelming need to talk about him and to mother and parent him, even though I couldn't physically do that. And so I also wrote a lot. I wrote for a publication. It's called Still Standing Magazine. And it's a child loss publication online. And I wrote for them for about a year and a half up until Brooks was born. And that was really, really helpful in finding healing, because I just had all these feelings and emotions and words. And I was never a writer. I hated writing before Turner died. And it was like I just felt like I was going to explode if I didn't get these things out. And so I had a blog and a website and put my stuff there as well. And I'm not very active on it anymore because those feelings just aren't there to that capacity where I feel like I have to do these things, otherwise I'm not going to survive.
Yes.
But I write when I need to.
Yeah.
And so writing has been very therapeutic. The gym was therapeutic despite
the difficulty. Yep.
Over and over again.
Yeah.
But that was helpful. Finding people in my day-to-day life that could be there in the capacity that I needed to, I knew would just show up and allow me to talk and not try to fix me. And that was difficult, but I found them. And I found out which friends I could lean on and which ones I couldn't.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was like a harsh reality too, of knowing like, oh, I can't count on this person despite our relationship that I've had. I can't even talk about one of my children with them because it's too uncomfortable for them. And over the years, I've learned to have a little bit more softness to my approach with that and not feel so hurt
Yeah.
because it's just a difficult situation for everyone.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
but
People.
yeah. And then I bought some jewelry. People gave me jewelry. Just doing things like I felt that honored him, but
Mhm.
also represented him in the way that was significant for me and our family.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So all those things coupled together helped, especially in those first couple of years, where I felt like my life was this roller coaster, and my husband deploying, and now this new baby, and then we moved, and it was just like a bunch of big, huge life changes.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, I feel like in the last 2 years, it's finally like calming down, and
Yeah.
I'm scared to say
I know
that.
that's the worst feeling, isn't it? You're like, is something around the corner? Yeah, I just
Yeah, yeah, it's hard not to feel like that all the time, where you're like things are going too well,
yeah.
like because despite losing Turner, we have a very beautiful, wonderful life,
Yeah.
and we're very, very blessed and fortunate for the things that we have. And but yeah, things have calmed down mentally and emotionally in the last couple of years. So I feel like I've been able to process things better
Yeah.
and learn how to cope with them better. Yeah,
I was gonna just mention because you said it's like a little too quiet now. I mean, because had talked to my counselor because we're 4 years out. You're 5 years out from your
mm-hmm.
loss, and I talked to my counselor. I was like, "This is so weird. Like, I just feel kind of anxious that there's nothing crazy or big, or do we need to do anything big for his birthday?" And she's like,
Yeah,
there's an ebb and flow to grief, and right now you're kind of in it's like you're kinda just flowing, and it's not
yeah,
craziness, and it will come
yeah,
back. I mean, it'll come back, but it's
mhm,
okay. So, I just had
yeah.
to remember that for myself. I'm like, "Okay. Okay, we're okay."
Yeah, it's certainly learning how to ride the waves
Mhm.
of loss and just the grief that comes with it. And but certainly those first 2, 3 years, I felt like I was just like in an ocean
Yeah,
drowning
just
and didn't know like
drowning.
how
Yeah.
I was going to move forward. And because there's no moving on, you certainly don't ever move on, but you
Mhm.
do have to figure out how to live
Yeah.
and not just survive.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was surviving for 3, 4 years
Mhm.
and not truly living.
Mhm.
And I was going from day to day and
Yeah.
like, okay, I got to do this again.
Yeah.
like, so, so yeah, so
I appreciate your candor in that because I think, some people don't realize how hard
yeah,
that time frame is to it's just and it looks so different for so many people too,
yeah.
so,
And for me, it felt very daunting.
yes.
Like I feel this right now, and I have to live the rest of my life without him. Am I going to feel like this forever?
Mhm.
What if I live another 60 years? Like, am I going to have to feel like this for
For
60 years? And
yeah,
so it felt so daunting and overwhelming.
and
And so,
exhausting.
and so that's when I was like, okay, you really got to figure this out. Now that I had the time, and I feel like COVID kind of did that for me
Mm,
too. Like that was kind of the turning point is COVID and when we moved.
mm,
And because everything shut down
yeah,
and the world finally felt like I did and the world stopped and my world had stopped 3 years prior and now everybody was like they finally got it like what it meant to like have
lose.
everything stop
Yeah.
and that the world was never the same after that like that's how I felt and so I was like okay good now everything stopped outside of me now I can focus on what I need to do
Mm,
here within me and so in an awful way, COVID was a huge blessing for me because
yeah.
it was horrible for everybody else, and many people. But I finally felt like I was able to work on what I needed to do
Wow,
because
that
I had all this other stuff going on outside of my world because essentially everything stopped.
yeah, it
So,
really did, and I just thinking about my I was like, "How was my COVID experience?" I was like, "Yeah, that was probably very similar."
yeah.
Oh,
Well, and I also didn't have to go to church,
yeah,
and church
yeah,
was a huge trigger for me.
yeah.
And yeah, so I had panic attacks going to church every single Sunday for 2, 3 years.
Yeah.
And so I no longer had to do that. Like I didn't have to do all the things I didn't want to do.
Right.
And I could just do what I needed to do and focus exclusively on that and my family and nothing else.
And that's
So
huge. Like, yes,
yeah,
that there definitely was a silver lining to the pandemic.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
So
Desiree, so you've kind of alluded to this before, and I just want to make sure that if there's any other things that you'd like to add to this, but um, what are some of the things that really stood out to you that were super helpful for you, like that other people did
yeah.
and said? What are some of those kind of outstanding things that you just kind of want to remember? Because I think those are really important to kind of like acknowledge and be grateful for those people and things that were done that you're like, thank you for being there for me, you know?
Yeah. So there are so many, especially in those early days. I mean, people brought flowers, like not just like flowers that eventually die, but flowers I could plant and take care of.
Oh, uh-huh.
A tree, they somebody, one of my husband's coworkers sent us a tree, a magnolia tree,
Oh,
a magnolia Ann. So it's got like these pretty pink blooms that bloom right around his birthday.
oh,
And and so just like those tangible things that like I could physically touch and hold that somebody actually took the time to send me or give us. I didn't care what it was. It just the thought behind it and the fact that they took the time to do that like just meant so much to me. The outpouring of love we received in that first month or two was just huge. And I think for me personally, it's just anyone who takes the time to just remember him with me and allows me to talk about him and doesn't feel like they have to fix me or be like, or explain, like, oh, well, God had a plan for him. So, and I'm like, I know that. I know that. But I still want to talk about him,
yeah.
like anyone who didn't try to fix me or who felt the need to fix me, but rather just like sat with me at where I was. And especially in those early days, that was like pivotal for me of nobody like trying to like cheer me up and
Mhm.
like make me better. Because I wasn't gonna be better. I couldn't bring him back, but I did need people to like sit with me and just be where I was. And the people who did that, like it just means the world to me. Yeah, I mean, we have so many things that people sent us and did, and we ended up taking some of the plants that we got like to our new home that we moved to.
Mhm.
Um, but we ended up leaving his tree behind because I was so terrified it would die.
Oh, yeah.
So it's still with that home
Yeah.
where Turner lived, and I felt that was just like bittersweet. There's a lot of things that were just bittersweet,
Yeah.
like that. Like I'm like I felt like that needed to stay there with that home,
Yeah.
and because that's where he lived and that's where we have memories of him. And so yeah, but I bought another tree, a magnolia, and that
Oh,
I
you did?
planted because I needed one. I'm like, I've got to have Turner's tree, even if it's not the Turner's
Yeah.
tree. I need a Turner's tree here. So that's been helpful for me, just being able to take care of things or do things in his memory. And
Mhm.
that doesn't work for everybody, but for me, it's very important in my healing and finding how to move forward in life while carrying him with me.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I can't leave him behind. I can't do that. So I've got to figure out ways to carry him with me throughout my life.
Yeah.
So,
And is that how you parent Turner? Are those your
yeah,
ways of parenting Turner?
yeah. So I just do things like around his birthday. Hit the first year, we collected enough money to purchase a cuddle cot
Oh,
for
that's
the
great.
hospital that he was born at because I desperately wanted just one night with him, and I couldn't because they just
Yeah.
what happens to their little bodies. And so I was like, if I can give anybody else that opportunity, I will gladly do that. So we did that the first year, and we donated one, and then the hospital also recognized the need and
Oh,
donated money for a second one as well. So
yay.
one on the labor delivery floor and one on the surgical floor where they bring the women afterwards. Um, so there's one on each location. And also, if there ever happens to be two families who need one, they can.
Yeah.
So, so just doing those little things of like paying it forward to other people who might find themselves in this
Mhm.
situation, and doing what I can to help them through it. That's been really healing for me. So we did that his first birthday, and then every birthday since we've collected casting kits,
Oh, uh-huh.
molds and impressions of their full hands and full feet,
Yeah.
for parents to take home with them. And I donate those to 4 hospitals in the Columbia area, and hopefully here in our new area as well. I'll be able to start donating there as well. But so that's been huge, just recognizing all the people who donate. I mean, we easily collect 100 to 120 every year.
Oh,
Um,
that's amazing.
yeah, of these kits. So we are able to help that amount of families every year who unfortunately find
Yeah.
themselves living this life now.
Yeah.
So, so that's been helpful. Um, and then just to find purpose in my life for him because he can't do that. And so I try to do things just to feel like, well, I know he would want me to do this, so I'm going to do it, or just finding a purpose that I can do for him.
Mhm.
And, that's been helpful, certainly.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, the move has also been helpful. And that's not for everybody. I'm not saying
Yeah.
pack up your things and move. But for us in particular, I really, really struggled where we were at. And everything was a trigger. Anytime I go to the grocery store, I'd hear babies crying, but like I don't have those same triggers here.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because of that surrounding, like I
Mhm.
was expecting to bring home this baby here and I didn't. And so being able to like have a new place to start this new chapter has certainly helped in finding healing as well.
Yeah.
And being able to just separate myself from that location, all the things I struggled with there.
Yeah.
So, but it was also like awful because he's buried there
Yeah.
and he was only 2.5 miles from our home
Mhm.
and I could go there anytime I wanted. Whereas now it's a trek and I didn't want it to be that way when we first lost him and now it is that way. But when I knew we were getting ready to move, I slowly started going out there less frequently to kind of prepare myself, knowing that, I'm not going to be able to come out here all the time.
Yeah.
So I've gotten used to it. I don't like it, but
Yeah.
I've gotten used to it. And taking care of his grave is also another thing that I enjoy doing as well,
Yeah.
bringing him things and just sitting with him.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's got this beautiful little spot and he's got this beautiful headstone that we had custom made and it's got a lamb on top of it.
Oh.
It's huge. But when we picked it, we were like, this is the only thing we can give him
Yeah.
just for him.
Yeah.
And we wanted it to just be significant for the amount we love him. And that's what we decided to do was have this huge, beautiful headstone for him.
That's amazing. That's so great. I know. Yeah, the headstone, there's so much weight to it because you're like, this is might be the last thing like I make for him. Like this is gonna be a big, big purchase. And
Yeah.
so yeah.
Well, and it was also placed on our 13th wedding
Oh,
anniversary.
was it?
Yeah, and that was kind of like because my husband was gone while they were doing it, and
Yeah.
then they could get it done by Thanksgiving, and then it wasn't placed until our anniversary, which is the 22nd of December.
Oh.
So we had that placed, and then we told the kids we were pregnant, like all within a couple of
Oh.
days. A
That's a
huge
lot.
emotional thing.
Yeah.
Well, but it's beautiful, and we're happy with what we did, and feeling like it represented our son well enough
Ye
for the situation.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but
Desiree, I wanted to ask a couple last questions in closing.
yeah,
You did mention some things that were super helpful and things that helped you, like other people did, and also what you did to kind of help you with your grief and really just kind of getting more accustomed to this loss. So, and I kind of do like to ask this question, but are there any things that are less helpful to say and do after somebody's lost a baby. Because I have
Yeah.
some things, but I mean, we always talk about this. So,
I found anything that started with at least or but was not helpful.
yeah.
It was like they were trying to make it better.
Mhm.
And like well, at least you know you can have children. Some women can't. Or, I mean, these are things people actually said. And,
Mhm.
well, at least you got to, what was the one that he said? Well, at least you can get pregnant, or at least you were able to spend time with him. And at least anything with at least at the start was just like it was like a kick in the gut,
Yeah.
and like they
It's,
were almost invalidating what I had been
yeah.
through and the lot that had just occurred.
Yeah. Totally
So
minimizing it. Yeah.
yeah, or at least you have 4 kids here.
Yeah.
Some people, don't have one. And I'm like, I know. I know some people can't have one, but I lost a child.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter what number he was in my family.
Yeah.
Like, he was still my child. So that wasn't helpful. I found the Christian platitudes were very difficult for me, even though I'm Christian.
Yep.
I'm like, I didn't want to be told scripturally or anything about the reasons for his death.
Mhm.
And because to me there wasn't a reason for why he had to die, and I found those to be least helpful at all. Like, like, well, God needed him more, and I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what child would you
Yeah.
give up?
Which one are you? Yeah, exactly. That's a
Yeah,
great
one of your
retort.
kids would you gladly give over? Well,
Yeah.
at least he's in a better place, or God has him now, or God needed another flower in his garden was one of them. I'm like, what? Like, he's a flower in some garden? Like, that
Uh,
doesn't make sense at all. But okay. So it was just a variety of different trying to explain away the situation instead of just mourning with us.
mhm.
So those were not helpful. And I had a couple of people telling me that I just needed to focus on the kids I did have. And I was like, I am.
Definitely do that. Yep, I definitely do that.
I I lost a child and they lost a sibling. So what, like, how would you suggest I go about doing that?
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, just any trying to find an explanation for why this happened beyond like the actual reason why he died, like the
Mhm.
literal reason but why he died, was not helpful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, trying to make it better. It's not, no words are ever going to make it better.
Mm-mm.
um so
Yeah,
yeah.
and I just want to point out, like, I love how you said the folks that were there for you, they were just there to sit with you,
Yeah.
to kind of mourn with you, to grieve with you. They're not making it better. They were just there, and
Yeah.
sometimes that's what you
And they
need.
weren't hurrying me along
Y-
either.
Yeah, yeah. They're letting you do
They
your
were
thing.
like, okay, it's been a year. Like,
Yeah,
and you're still talking about him?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much.
Like, how long are you going to talk about your kids that are here?
Yeah,
Because I'm going to do the same for my son, even though he's not here.
yeah.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Well,
But
Desiree, thank you. This has been such a wonderful, enlightening, helpful conversation. I think, in seeing how it's kind of been even a little bit longer time after your loss. And I wanted to ask one last question. Do you have any last bit of advice that you'd like to give to any of our listeners? And that could be to anybody that's going through this or anybody that is supporting somebody who's going through this.
I think it's just been helpful to figure out what was going to help me, but I
Mm,
couldn't compare myself to anyone else or look at someone else and see how they were dealing with it and felt like I needed to do exactly what this person does, or I needed to do these specific things in my grieving. That I just allowed myself to feel whatever it was I needed to feel and just let it be.
mhm,
And when I found myself going to like darker places, recognizing that and
mhm.
being like, okay, we can't go there. We can't go there. So that was certainly helpful for me. If anyone else who's walking through this with somebody, just recognizing this is never going to get better, but you do learn how to cope and you do learn how to move forward. And there's no timeline on that. They will have to figure that out on their own. And you can certainly be a part of that process, but you can't pull someone out of grief and you can't make them do certain things. So just recognizing that it is a long process. And I don't know personally if I'll ever be healed where I'm like, okay, I'm good. But I can find healing and I can find ways to feel healed in my heart, but no, my heart is so broken because he's not here.
Yeah.
And make my grief work in a way that's helpful and not hindering me in living my life. But also recognizing if I need to cry, I'm going to cry and I'm not going to feel bad for it. And knowing this is a roller coaster. And there's never not going to be a day where I'm not going to think about my son or miss him or want him here, and wonder what he would be doing. He's very much a part of my everyday life, whether he's here or not. And a lot of the things actually I do are because of him and the influence he's had on me, especially with how I take care of my children and how I view life and the fragility of it. So it just gives you a whole new perspective on life
Yeah.
too. And yeah, so it's certainly been eye opening in knowing how to parent and how to live,
Yeah.
and also how to treat people that I love and cultivate those relationships. He's been a huge blessing to me all around, despite the tragedy of his death.
Yeah.
So he's provided a lot of teaching. He's taught me a lot. I think we both thought we were going to teach our children, but I don't know if you feel like this, but he has taught me a lot.
Yes.
And I'm very grateful for my son's teaching moments
Yeah.
and also God teaching me in the same moment as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes, I agree. There's like this sharpening that happens in my vision because of my son. Yeah. I
Yeah.
just thank you so, so much, Desiree. It has been an immense pleasure to talk to you and to learn about Turner and to see his influence in the world. Like I feel like he has made so many things better. You, your family, like all of those
Yeah.
relationships. And I am sure that those who are listening to this interview as well as your birth episode, like will be better as well. So thank you again for your time.
Yeah. But thank you for having me. I appreciate you allowing me to come on here and share my story. And I'm hoping it might help other people not feel so alone or figure out how to help support someone who's finds themselves here. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.